Hello and welcome to DTC Podcast. I'm Eric Dyck. Today's show is with Brandon Horoho, CMO and co-founder of Montana Knife Company, makers of high-quality steel, hunting, and now culinary knives. Knives being a restricted category on all platforms has meant Brandon's had to be very strategic when it comes to driving the 1,600% growth that he's architected since starting the business with Master Bladesmith Josh Smith in 2020, just 3 years ago. This podcast breaks down his product-focused drop strategy in which every week is meticulously planned out for over a year in advance across all channels. You'll learn exactly what someone has to do to become a bladesmith, and yes, it does involve cutting multiple things. You'll learn the secrets of why the average MKC customer has 2.5 knives and not just one, and you'll hear the ins and outs of an 8-figure product drop model, along with the challenges of selling to hunters this way, and lots more. Ready to sharpen your blade? On with the show.
Market like you own it. And the idea is how can I create energy every single week? How can I create something exciting? Something that's worth sending an email out to a couple 100,000 people? Like, what is exciting enough to talk about? That's not a hard sell, but it's like, hey, here's something new. So that's our way of doing paid ads, is kind of doubling down on our product, doubling down on innovation, doubling down on something exciting. So we do a knife drop every single Thursday and we pick a certain model. So it almost gives me the structure to say like, hey, this is what I'm going to focus on this week. I don't talk about the other 12 knives that are in our ecosystem. It almost gives us the permission to overly be excited about stuff every single week.
With TapCart, you can instantly turn your Shopify store into an epic mobile app and power a low upkeep revenue stream designed to convert mobile shoppers. And with Q4 just around the corner, there's never been a better time to set up your brand's mobile app. Just like Messi, who launched in 2020 and literally 3 times his sales, or Reason Clothing, who saw a 42% increase in sales over Black Friday, or LSKD, who reached #1 on the App Store last year, beating out brands like Nike and Amazon. Mobile apps give your brand a new owned distribution channel with better conversion rates, higher AOV, and arm you with push notifications that just blow other channels out of the water when it comes to eliciting a purchase. Be like Messi and check out tapcart.com. That's TAPCART.com and get your mobile app started today. Brandon, welcome to the D2C Podcast. Super happy to have you here. The Montana Knife Company is blowing up. Tell me about it. Tell me about how you got involved with this business.
Man, well, first of all, Eric, thank you for having me on the podcast. But yeah, to kind of like jump into it, we always say that, Montana Knife Company is our 30-year overnight success. The company technically has only been around for 3 years, but my business partner, Josh Smith, who's the Master Bladesmith, has been making knives for 30 years. And he's one of the top Master Bladesmiths in the world. I think right now there's only like 120 of them alive. And so
I wanted to ask about that right away. I love new terms, and bladesmith. I don't hear the word bladesmith very much. Sounds very cool. What is it? What goes into being a bladesmith?
So it's actually wild. When I got into the industry, I kind of knew about it, but I didn't understand like how intense it was and how wild it is that he became a Master Bladesmith at the age of 19. So most Master Bladesmith average age is in their like 40s, 50s, and 60s by the time they achieve that level. It's actually a testing process. So you have to learn how to make a knife and become a journeyman. And like first you apply to be a journeyman, you do that for 2 years, and then you test. And like, so what you have to do is you have to forge a blade that is able to chop through 2 2x4s, and then chop through a rope, and then shave hair on your arm. And then you have to be able to bend that blade 90 degrees. So
all in the same session. You just got to be able to do all these things after. Then it's got to cut a tomato, according to all the knife commercials I've seen.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Real paper thin. But then after that is the next level that's really hard to achieve is like you have to make a set of certain knives that have certain standards of Damascus and stuff like that. And then you have to present that to a panel of Master Bladesmiths. And then they decide, if you're able to, either become a Master Bladesmith or like, hey, you have to try next year. And again, it's wild. And that's what's so amazing about this company is, like we're one of the only mass-produced knife companies that's actually owned by a Master Bladesmith. And the stuff that Josh has made is just absolutely amazing, like 1,000 layer Damascus with gold inlays and like all this stuff. And, he's made knives for, sheiks and royalty and, some of the biggest celebrities in America. And, and then pretty much what he did is he went and distilled all that knife knowledge into how can I just make the best hunting knife? And that's kind of where like MKC was born, was just like, he's always wanted to make a knife for the average, hunter consumer that can afford one of his knives, because to do a custom knife his way, it'll cost you $3,000-$4,000. But the idea was like, how can I make that quality of a knife, but not have to worry about the Damascus or the gold inlays or any of like the stuff that makes it, more of a piece of like an artifact versus like a knife.
But the pedigree is there, and we were talking about this earlier. Like you can't really F around. You need, when you're a hunter, when you're out there with a knife, you can't have something substandard. So I imagine having the credibility and the track record built in has really helped the brand.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, and this almost goes back to like my biggest wrong assumption about the brand was when we launched this company, we thought we were going to make one knife that we can hand to any hunter going on any hunt anywhere in the world. And that was the goal, was like, let's make a knife so good that we can hand it to the most, hardcore backcountry hunter who's going into Alaska, that's taking a float plane into the backcountry, getting dropped back there for 2 weeks to 2 months. And that's the only knife they need. Like their life is going to rely on this blade, and that's the first knife we came out with, was that Blackfoot 2.0. And so to go back to what you're saying is like, our goal was to make a knife that could handle anything and any hunter, anything could throw at it. But then where my assumption was wrong was like, I thought I was only going to sell one knife to one person, or one knife to everybody. But we ended up, becoming more of a, we're able to sell, multiple knives to the same person, for just different functions.
So you went from what you perceived as what would be like a utility item essentially to a bit more of a status symbol. It seems like with the way the brand has it's still it's got pure utility, but people are collecting these knives at this point.
Yeah, it's absolutely wild watching like our customers like collect every single model, and we also have some that are collecting everything in one color and then going back and trying to collect the other colors and stuff like that. So it was a really good assumption to be wrong at.
Yeah, I guess so. Okay, well, talk to me about the growth journey then. I see, you guys hit the market hard. You joined on, I think shortly, after your co-founder has had this big experience in knife making, becoming a blade master. How were you brought on?
So it was 2020. Josh and I had some mutual friends, and Josh was trying to find someone to help him with like his custom knife work. So I met up with him a couple times, and we shot some photos and did some content. And the conversation always went back to the idea of Montana Knife Company. Even though we were trying to help him with his custom stuff, it kept on going back to the Montana Knife Company. And then finally, I think we were just sitting around after a photo shoot, and we're like, we just need to do this. I was like, I can help you. We'll get the website going. I'll, build out all the funnels and everything you need, and we'll see where it goes from there. So in 2020, we launched the website, and, right out of the gate, it was a huge success because, Josh had, all these customers that wanted an affordable knife for his custom, but then it started to plateau, but then it started to pick up again. And we started seeing something like, there's something here. And then also at the same time, a lot of our competitors were exiting the space because the hunt space is really, really hard to advertise in because you can't pay to play. Performance ads are really hard to run. But we're like, well, we're authentic. We're the hunters. Like, we can do this. We can create the content that kind of battle the paid issue. And so then we're just like, hey, let's double down. Then we ordered our next round of knives, and I kind of brought in that drop structure from previous past lives, set that up, and we almost pretty much pre-sold everything. And we had our first drop, and it sold out in I think 14 minutes. And we're like, okay, I think we got something. And then we just honestly just repeated that for the next couple of months. But we honestly had to, build a set of knives, sell them, order steel, build a set of knives, order, sell them. And that was kind of like our growth pattern for the first year until we started buying up all this steel in the United States. there was no second parties that carried our steel anymore. We bought it all. And then finally we had to start going to the mill. The problem with the mill was there was an 18-month lead time. So we had a lot of planning to do, and we're still, buying steel off old knife makers and stuff to kind of fill the space in between, our next big run of steel, showed up.
Tell me about I'm curious about the steel. What kind of steel do you need for your knives specifically?
Yeah, so we use 52-100 ball bearing steel. It's a very common steel in the custom knife world, but not so much in the mass produced knife world. But it comes in super thin sheets that we need. So a lot of the stock really isn't thin enough to make knives because a lot of people make tools out of it. And the idea is that it's 52-100, so it's ball bearing steel. And ball bearings are meant to sit there and spin and spin and spin and never wear out. And that's the goal with the edge. So you have really, really good edge retention with 52-100. But also the other side of it is that's super easy to resharpen. So when you're in the field, you can resharpen it with a small little stone or like a little sharpening device. I've even seen people sharpen our knives in the bottom of ceramic mugs.
Very cool. And so how do you characterize your growth? So you basically came out swinging in 2020. From there, walk us through how you would characterize your growth story. Yeah,
our growth story, it's been wild. I think the biggest thing is I've been in the the direct to consumer space for 10 to 15 years prior to this. I made every mistake in the book. There probably isn't a mistake I haven't made, but that was the nice part about going into this company and starting it from scratch was we were able to set up the systems from day one. Collecting emails, collecting SMS, getting people just ways to notify every customer that comes to our website, things like that, and building that base early. But then, the biggest thing is I think it was just being completely transparent about our growth story. We were never we never hid the fact that we were the small guys and we were struggling and we were trying to find steel. And the first year, every social media post was pretty much me just complaining about not finding steel, dealing with bad vendors, dealing with bad, partners and suppliers and things like that. And it was kind of cool because it almost, the community rallied around us because they saw what we were doing. They saw how hard it was to do this all 100% USA made, without any foreign help. And it honestly just started to snowball and snowball and snowball.
And this is all without ads. This is what's crazy to me. Almost everyone I talk to on the podcast, hits the scale button, with doubling down on spend on Meta or Google. And so you're doing this all from just sort of that initial organic, fire starter that your partner had, and then just sort of growing from there with just evocative images. I was thinking about it's just also this hunting space. The challenge of it is probably how competitive it is, but the upside is just how tight it is. I bet there's once you kind of get into that space, it's easy for word to spread pretty easily about what you're trying to build.
Yeah. And right there, you actually touched on something too, is that's the thing is Josh and I are at every hunting expo. We're at, there's something called Total Archery event. And it's this gathering of all the, archery hunters that meet up in the summer and they go to a ski hill and they shoot all the targets that go down the hill, but it's massive. And I think that's the thing is what's worked really well for Montana Knife Company is doubling down on kind of the older traditional marketing styles, a lot of community, a lot of face-to-face, a lot of, one of our greatest things is seeding product, is just getting the knives in people's hands. We make such a good product that I know once it's in someone's hands, they're going to talk about it, they're going to use it, and they're going to want to buy another one. So, we've really been trying to lean. So since we can't do the paid ads, we really try to double down on the traditional marketing, which is just being in front of everyone, being authentic, word of mouth, and just always just being top of mind with our content. Our posting schedule is wild across all platforms.
I wanted to dive into that because I think in the absence of ads, it's you've got your social media distribution network set up, but then you've really in how you've built out your product drop schedule, that appears to be the real lifeblood of your growth and marketing campaigns. Can you talk a little bit about that strategy and how it evolved?
Yeah, and this is my favorite part because, like before when I was in e-com space, it was like how can I spin a discount this weekend to create excitement? This time, I always kind of like joke. It's kind of like market like you own it, and the idea is like how can I create energy every single week? How can I create something exciting? How can I create something that's worth sending an email out to a couple 100,000 people? Like what is exciting enough to talk about that that's not a hard sell, but it's like, hey, here's something new. So that's our kind of way of doing paid ads is kind of doubling down on our product, doubling down on innovation, and then just doubling down on something exciting. So good examples of something exciting is like doing a collaboration with Yeti that will drop like a certain tumbler or something on a Tuesday. That gives me a reason to send out an email and a text message and do a whole like social media campaign, and that all helps fuel the energy for like our knife drops on Thursday. And so we do a knife drop every single Thursday. Our shop literally makes as many knives we can in the week, and as many knives as we made, like we'll drop that on Thursday, and we pick a certain model. And like that's like, so it almost gives me the structure to say like, hey, this is what I'm going to focus on this week. Is it the Blackfoot? Is it the Speed Go? And then I get to talk about all those features all week long. I don't talk about the other 12 knives that are in our ecosystem. I just talk about that one knife for a full week. And like I said, it almost gives us the permission to just overly be excited about stuff every single week.
And again, and it leads you from your original hypothesis, which was, okay, someone will buy one heirloom knife for their family and get passed down, to when you're dropping unique variations of attractive looking knives each week, you're just getting into people's heads more and more about how cool your products are. I imagine that's been like, how many SKUs are you up to now?
So I think knife wise, including our culinary, I think we're around like 12 or 13 individual SKUs. And then all of them are always come in the same 6 colors too. And that was like one thing that was very different in the knife world, was especially the mass produced side, was like, hey, we'll do this knife and like maybe we'll launch it in black and blue. The next one we'll launch in like black and OD or something like that. But I was like, kind of taking a page out of like Apple and stuff like this. I was like, this is a chance for us to be a little bit different, and then also to like set some really strong branding guidelines. And like, here's our 6 colors. Every single knife comes in those 6 colors, and we rarely deviate. So when we do deviate, it's a special event.
Interesting. And so you're dropping a knife pretty much every week of the year?
We are. So my operations manager and I, we actually sat down and we completely scheduled out every drop now until the last weekend, the last Thursday in 2024. So we have pretty much 6 quarters completely lined out. And it looks like an elephant, but like I said, that kind of how they say it's like just taking it one bite at a time. It's not that bad when you take it week by week by week, but over like saying like, hey, I'm gonna have 52 drops next year. That sounds insane, but the system's there, and we have a lot of fun doing it too.
So what's one of your top learnings you've made about this drop model that you would pass on to our listeners?
So I think the biggest thing is that, a lot of these companies that do drop stuff, they're always like worried about being in stock, because they're like, oh no, like the excitement's gone and all this stuff. And this is another time where I love being wrong. Is I thought like, man, once we're in stock, that it's going to start killing our drop models on Thursday night and stuff like that. But then what we found out is that we actually have 2 types of customers. We have one type of customer that absolutely loves the drop model. They like the excitement of it. They like sitting there at 6:55 p.m., with their credit card ready and their shipping ready and everything like that, and trying to buy a knife in 1 minute, because some of our drops have sold out in 45 seconds, some in a half hour, some in 2 hours, depending on the volume. But then what we didn't know is that we had a huge customer base that didn't actually want to do the drop model and just wanted to buy a knife. And the one metric that I check every single day, I check weekly, is new knife customers. Is how many customers do we have in our ecosystem that own at least one knife? And the day that we went, in stock for the first time with one of our models, we had the largest growth of new customers because they didn't want to sit there on a Thursday night and, grab a drop. They bought on, that knife drop released on Thursday, and we had, just as many people buy on Friday and Saturday. It slowly started to tail off, but like new customers, that was our greatest, weekend for new customers.
Super interesting. I'm, a lot of the brands that I talk to, and me coming from an affiliate marketing background, quite often the market that is sort of the default target is women in a lot of ways. And I'm curious about, first of all, are men the core demographic for your knives? And is there anything you've learned about marketing specifically to men, if that is the case?
Mm-hmm. No. So we just did an NPS survey with some additional questions just to find out who our customer really is. And we're 96% male right now is our current purchaser who owns a knife. So we're very, very male heavy on our demo. And, it's kind of wild. In the early days, that drop model was really hard to accept. I don't think people like being told no. I don't think they like being told that they couldn't do a pre-sale, they couldn't do a pre-order. And we had a lot of nasty emails, a lot of nasty comments, a lot of really tough customer service during the first year. But then once they get kind of brought into our ecosystem and our super fans kind of get in the comments and they started answering for us like, hey guys, just understand, I know it's kind of a pain not to be able to get a knife, but they have a drop every Thursday. You'll probably be able to get this model in a couple of weeks and stuff like that. But I think that was the hardest thing, was kind of educating this hunt space on that drop model. And the thing too is, like, I want to be very clear, like the drop model wasn't a plan. It wasn't like this. We didn't come into this like, hey, let's start a drop model. It was literally like, we were able to afford to make enough knives, and I just launched it on Thursday. And then the next one, and the problem is, like, we couldn't do pre-orders because we didn't know if we were going to be able to get steel. And this was during the height of COVID and stuff like that. And, all the military complexes were like buying up steel and like all this stuff. So we were just like, no pre-orders. We can't guarantee this knife. We're going to be able to make this knife in a year and a half. But like kind of sticking to that structure allowed us to continue the drop model, but also to just run a like more ethical company where it's like, hey, when you buy that knife, it ships out the next day. And so far, like 95% of all of our packages have shipped the next day, which is a really good feeling that we like, because especially in Montana, like you'll get it in the next, literally you order on a Thursday, you have it Saturday morning.
Very central. Yeah, it's funny, building a business in Victoria, British Columbia, things have really changed in the last 5 years in terms of like where you need to be building an incredible startup, an incredible business. What's the best part about building a business in Montana?
Content. Content is, it's probably the easiest part. Like I could literally walk out the door. We're right in the middle of the Rocky Mountains, especially, for hunting brands, if you're in Montana, like we can literally leave work and be hunting in, 30 minutes. We could be camping, we could be off-roading, we could be fly fishing, we could be doing all of that stuff, like, within a 5-mile radius of the shop. So that's probably the best part about being in Montana. But there are their downsides.
What is happening? Yeah, give me the downsides. What's a downside to being in Montana?
The downside is like our talent pool for hiring. We've been absolutely lucky hiring for like our knife techs, our knife sharpeners, shipping departments, like any of like the entry level jobs. Like that's the one beautiful thing about Montana is that a lot of people kind of complain about like Gen Z and stuff like that, but like our Gen Z is great because they were still, sons of farmers and daughters of farmers and daughters of hard workers. And, our shop downstairs is primarily like probably 25 years old is probably the medium age of everyone. And they're just a bunch of savages. That's why I always joke that like we just have a crew of savages that are just here to work. They all want overtime. It's great. But where we've struggled is, now that we're getting into manufacturing and we want to start developing folders with like crazy mechanisms and all this engineering and things like that, that we have to start hiring, remote, because those people just don't exist in Montana. CNC operators, like high end, mechanical engineers and things like that. So we've had a lot of struggle trying to find those like executive level stuff. versus like the lower, I don't even want to say lower, but more like entry level positions.
Do you bring them to Montana, or do they work remote, the ones that you hire that aren't from Montana?
Yeah, it's actually been a really good mix. So on the marketing side, we have a lot of remote, just because like they can just sit there and just do their thing, and they know how to do it. And they do it really, really well. But then like some of the on-site stuff where you actually have to be like kind of plugged into the machine and stuff like that, we've been moving them in.
But they just look at your Instagram feed and they're like, oh yeah, I could live there. That looks pretty fun.
Yeah.
Amazing. What I wanted to ask, as CMO of this company, what's your favorite part of your role as co-founder and CMO at Montana Knife Company?
Oh man, so much. You know, honestly, probably like watching the growth, managing the brand, like all of that stuff. I always joke that I'm the no man. Like I think branding is more about saying no to things and saying yes to things. So I love seeing that. And then just kind of like, because also being CMO and part owner and stuff like that, wearing many, many hats, it's like problem solving, and every week it's a completely different problem. But then also too, just a couple of months ago, the marketing team was just pretty much, it was myself, my number two, like lead stack, our digital stack director, and one videographer. That's pretty much all we ran for the past like 3 years. And then just last month, we added 3 more people to it. So we doubled our marketing team. So I'm making a switch from being the person that's, extremely hands-on, taking the photos, posting, doing all that stuff, keeping everything going, to a little bit more of, a leadership role. And I'm really like enjoying that. I love watching the team grow. I love setting the goals, and I love seeing them starting to, take the plan that has been built for the past couple of years and starting to actually grow that past way bigger than like I could ever by myself.
What does that team look like in a business where you're not running as many ads?
Yeah, so it's actually really interesting. So we have myself, we have our digital stack director, we have one digital, I guess you would say like DTC manager who handles all of our D2C, and then we have a graphic designer and 2 just absolute killer content guys, video and photo. So that's the key right there. Is our in-house is absolutely amazing. And then on top of that, with us being in Montana, like I had to, especially at the beginning of the company, I had to rely a lot on contractors. And I cannot express how amazing that's been to find really, really good contractors who are extremely specialized in what they do. So, we have an absolutely amazing PR guy, absolutely amazing SEO, an absolutely amazing community marketing manager that helps with some of our affiliate stuff. We just onboarded a publicist, all these like little contractors that, we don't need a full-time position in-house, but can do probably, handle MKC of 20% of their time instead of 100% of their time.
Do you bring up PR? I'm interested. Mm-hmm. What's been a PR win for MKC?
So, our PR is extremely niched. Like we completely, so the goal was to like, hey, in the hunt space, we just want to show up in every magazine. We want to show up on every product blog. Our biggest thing, our goal this year was when you Googled best knife company or best hunting knife, we were able to get on the list of like the top 3 of those. So that's our biggest win for PR is, just showing up in like organic search. And like really targeting those like publications, especially the stuff where guys are going in and like researching new gear, researching hunts, researching all of their, anything they need for the season.
How has your move into the kitchen gone? So from an outdoor brand now moving into kitchen, how like, is it the same people buying the knives for their kitchen, or is it a whole new audience that you're opening up to?
So we're still digging through the data on that, on like if it's a new customer, but it is a lot of repeat customers. So the goal is like, when we launched our chef's knives, like, the marketing message wasn't like, hey, these are the best chef's knives for you and, to use in your kitchen in New York City. The idea was like first blood to last bite. Our goal is to replace every single cutting device in a hunter's like ecosystems. So you have the knives for processing, in the field. You have the knives for processing in the garage when you're breaking down the animal, and then you have the chef knives in your kitchen, and then you're going to eventually have steak knives. And again, on this podcast, I'm all the times I'm wrong, but they're always really good wrongs. Is we thought the culinary thing would be just a cool thing to add to the brand, but it ended up being. I have a feeling next year it's probably going to be a larger part of our brand than we've ever expected once we're able to catch up on demand. Like chef's knives are extremely hard to make correctly. Let's put it that way. So, and to give you a little history on our chef's knives, they're actually, it's a collaboration between Josh Smith and Mareko Mamasi, who is one of the top chef knife makers in the country, if not the world. So these aren't just like, hey, a hunting knife company went and made chef's knives. Like, that's one thing I love about Josh and working with Josh is like, he's like, I know how to make the best hunting knife, but I don't know how to make the best kitchen knife. And I've seen his kitchen knives. He makes really, really good chef's knives. Like, don't get him wrong. But I love that he's like, no, let's go reach out to the best guy in the country and talk to him about like, what's the best chef knives for people who actually use them all day long. And that's the knife we made. And it's been super successful. We launched it last Black Friday, blew past all of our expectations. And now we're working on how to like replicate that, because it's hard to make, you can make a couple hundred of something, but once you start making a couple thousand of something, it's much, much different.
I know the hunting market is big, and I was going to ask you if it's growing. I imagine as we get more urbanized, more and more people are looking to get out, but still, like the chef's knives market has got to be a lot bigger. A lot more people are chopping carrots than they are skinning a deer, I bet.
Yeah, and the hunting market, especially here in the United States, it's very odd. We're seeing a large growth in older hunters becoming new hunters. So like 35 and older getting into bow hunting, backcountry hunting, things like that. The problem is that we are seeing a decline in the younger populations, in new teen hunters and stuff like that. So that's something that we want to start working towards is like kind of, getting the word out about that and trying to get, younger kids involved so that we can kind of keep these traditions going. But you're also, you're spot on that the culinary market, we have no idea how big that is or how big that could be.
Indeed. What can you describe a little bit? I think it's always interesting when brands get into like the co-creation of the market as a whole. And I know you're doing that through your socials and things like that. What are some ideas for how you'll get people into hunting at a younger age? That's
a really good question. And, I think that's all going to come through mentorship. Because hunting is, it has a really high bar of entry. First of all, you have to learn how to shoot. If that's either rifle, archery, you have to learn how to go out and hunt. And then also too, like we're finding out the hardest bar of entry is like not so much like picking their choice of firearm or going hunting. It's like a lot of people we talk to are like, once I shoot the animal, I don't know what to do with it. I don't know how to process it, and that's something where you really need like a mentor to kind of teach you how to properly like recover the meat and bring it back and get it processed and stuff like that. So we're kind of looking at it from like how can we educate people on processing animals properly, getting the most out of their harvest, but then also too, really working with all the hunters in the field now and trying to convince them to like, hey, there might be someone in your church or there might be one of your buddy's friends, maybe his dad doesn't hunt, but you hunt, but like he shows interest in it. There's nothing wrong with saying like, hey, do you want to go hunting? Do you want to, can I, just take you out just so you can get an understanding, and that's how I learned how to hunt. I didn't grow up in a family that hunted until I met my wife. And then her father-in-law and her grandfather were massive hunters. And it was, and that was one of the first things I ever did with my father-in-law was to go hunt. And I think it was a little bit more of just figuring out what type of guy I was before I got too serious with his daughter.
Yeah. What are your intentions while
Exactly.
we're in this deer blind here?
Yeah.
I also wanted to ask about your co-founder's custom knife work, and I'm wondering, is there a place because obviously you want to mass produce these knives, to scale the business. Is there still a place for custom, $1,000 knives, either as contest items or items of like extreme, that people really, really want? Are you using his custom knife skills in this business at all?
Yeah, we have, but we rarely pull that card. And the only two times we've ever actually pulled that card, was for fundraisers. So a good example was last year we had massive flooding in Montana. So, and we're like, there has to be something we can do. And, we can just cut a check or all this stuff. But then what we decided to do was Josh actually ended up forging a knife and finishing it with another really popular knife maker here in Montana, Will Stelter. And, we ended up raffling that off in a form of like, if you buy a t-shirt, you end up getting 5 entries to purchasing this knife. And I think we ended up raising $85,000 in 1 week. Absolutely insane. It was so cool to do that. And, the nice thing too is like Josh and I actually went down and handpicked like the actual like the fundraiser recipients of who was going to receive that money and stuff, and like what areas needed the best, instead of just kind of giving it to like a blanket donation.
What I wanted to ask about your any big challenge. What would you say is the biggest challenge that you've overcome in growing the knife company?
I don't know if we've overcome it, but our biggest challenge, hands down, is top of funnel. Is new eyes on the brand. We struggle so much to get outside of our niche. Like we do really, really well on Instagram, but then like any other channels, to get like, it just doesn't seem to get the same traction as like Instagram and stuff like that. That could be skill within inside of our company. Definitely like I'm not very strong on like TikTok and things like that, and I think there's room for growth there. But it's definitely just getting new eyes on the brand, because there is. I would never say we're blocked or shadow banned or stuff like that. It's just the fact that we can't, plug in like a lookalike audience and start promoting to them. So it's a lot of word of mouth, a lot of our customers and our fans sharing our page out to their followers.
Are there a lot of hunting? Because I'm thinking of like, I don't know what's current, but are there a lot of like TV shows around this stuff? Are there Netflix series around this kind of hunting that you could partner with?
Yeah, so and we actually started doing that. So like one of the biggest TV like shows right now is The Meat Eater with Steve Rinella on Netflix, and that's an absolutely amazing show. It's not filmed like your traditional like hunting show where it's just kind of dudes in deer blinds blasting deer and just a bunch of kill shots. Like there's a bunch of episodes where animals aren't harvested. It's all about just being out in the wild and the lifestyle of a hunter. And we've been sponsoring Steve's podcast, and that's been doing really good. And it's, again, super niche, super focalized, and that's been doing really well.
Anything else like outside of the box ways that you've expanded your top of funnel?
So top of funnel is, I would have to say like our greatest, wins have come from collaboration. If it's either collaborating on a knife with another brand, doing a big giveaway on Instagram, like that to us has been our greatest mover on Instagram. But the other stuff we've been doing is, since we're, this knife company that has very, very limited stock, we're very exclusive. I've been able to reach out to like our partner brands much bigger than us, 100-year-old brands, they've been in the hunting space forever, and be like, hey, we kind of have this model that we could do a secret drop. And we do a collaboration, with your logo on the knife, and we'll set up a secret landing page. And then, what they'll do is, our creatives do all the work on the front. So we set up the landing page, we help them build out an email. And then what they do is they'll send an email on to their list, and it comes back to our company. And then we get to sell them a knife with their logo on it. So they actually get to, get another product in their customers' hands. We get to, we get introduced to new customers. And it's just been a massive win-win the whole way around. And then we've actually been doing some cool fundraiser stuff. So a lot of companies, like, they don't need the income from that sale. So what we've been doing is, cutting them back a percentage of that sale. And then they've been donating it to their, their fundraiser of choice.
Very cool. Back to kitchen knives for a second. Our kitchen knives can be advertised. Is that correct?
They can be. Yes. But
so what's the problem?
The problem is stock availability. So we haven't been able to run any ads, that have been linked to conversion and stuff like that. So that's been our biggest issue is, our first time we dropped knives, they sold out in, I think, kitchen knives, I think they sold out in 3 minutes. Then we had a big Black Friday one that sold out in 2 hours. And then our last one was in February, and that one sold out in just like, I think, 4 or 5 minutes. So the issue is we haven't had knives in stock long enough to be able to run ads. And obviously Google, Marketplace and stuff like that doesn't like really pushing ads that don't have anywhere to actually buy them.
And then so you mentioned, I think I have a stat here that your average customer has like 2.5 knives, which again is quite a bit different from your original hypothesis. What's been the other than, I guess, dropping lots of attractive knives, what's been the best tactic to get someone to come back and buy their second knife?
I think that, I think the first thing is, no matter what, it's quality. The quality of the first knife. I always joke around that I could sell anyone one knife, but it takes the quality of the knife and the manufacturing to sell the second and third. So I would start with that. But then also too is like the knives that we're designing, they're all for a purpose. So I think that's why people are buying second and third and fourth knives is like, they'll buy the Blackfoot, which is like a general hunting knife. But then we have fillet knives, and then we have the chef's knives, and then we have some EDC stuff. And then you can kind of niche down to we have ultralight knives that weigh like 1.8 ounces. So all of our knives, they don't just look cool, but they all have a function that helps aid a hunter, doing what he's good at doing.
And each knife that he gets probably just makes him feel a little, a little more prepared, a little,
right.
a little more ready for every situation.
Yeah.
Very cool. I wanted to ask, in a business where you're not pumping as much money into ads, if we were to give you a $50,000 grant, how would you apply that to your business to see the most growth?
Oh, that's a good question. If I had another 50,000, I think what I would do is, I would create some type of in-person activation event. If like a mini, kind of like expo or something that would be just all centered around us, invite in all the people that have helped grow our brand, all of our ambassadors, all of our hunt athletes, any of our, all of our top fans. I would bring them all in and do some type of really cool content, eccentric events. If that's, learning how to process an animal from beginning to end, different, archery techniques, how to make a knife from scratch. I think that would be really, I think that's how I would spend the money. Because I think from there, I'd be able to take that content and use that over a year.
Yeah, I think you guys are so good at the Instagram content. What has been your best foray into that longer content already? Do you guys have a YouTube channel? Are you making longer form content there?
We do, and there's actually a couple, and yeah, we have a YouTube channel, and it's wild because a lot of our content has been information based. So a lot of SEO focused content. And just over the past couple months, we've started focusing a little bit more on longer form. We did 2 hunt films, but what's been really doing well is our weekly vlog. So it's just the behind the scenes of what's going on in the shop. And that's just been doing so well. And it's cool too, because people are starting to understand who's working in our shop. People are starting to know their names. Lauren, who does our lasering, and Tristan, who's sharpening our knives, and Al, who's learning how to sharpen knives, and all this stuff. So and you really get it is full transparency of how our shop is run.
Super cool. You get to see how the sausage is made.
Exactly.
What I see, it doesn't appear you guys sell on Amazon. I was wondering what went into the decision not to be on Amazon.
So that's actually something we're kicking around right now. So Nick, who we hired, just recently for our direct-to-consumer marketing position, he has a lot of experience in that. So that's something I think that we're going to start onboarding. I've always been very protective of where our knives are on different websites and stuff like that, because it's already hard enough. I don't want to have to compete against ourselves. But Amazon is starting to look very attractive right now for us as we're starting to grow and things like that. And some of the direct-to-consumer brands that are very strict direct-to-consumer, no retail, no nothing like that, I'm starting to see them do Amazon really, really well, and in a very high-quality way too.
Very cool. I guess it's always risky when you're going to go against a bunch of other products that may not have the same attention to detail, but your prices will reflect that, right? So it could be a challenge when you're going up against a $16.99, Chinese knife.
Yeah, that's the hardest part. Is like it's the price scale in my world is very drastic.
What's the most successful non-knife product that you guys have launched?
So it's kind of wild, like obviously like our apparel as a whole, like is doing really, really well. Like our hats, our t-shirts, our hoodies, our jackets, things like that. It's a great upsell and it's a great but I hate even calling it upsell, but it's like people like our knives so much that they kind of want to show that they have one without having a knife, on themselves. But then also too, we've had some really, really good success with what I call like traditional items like Zippos, leather, sheaths, things like that. They are kind of like in that, like you kind of joke, but it's like that whiskey and cigar world. That's kind of like our customer, but like it's crazy how well those Zippos do, and we grade the same graphic that's on our t-shirt or our t-shirts.
Do you sell a Montana Army knife, or are you just sticking with the hunting and that? Because it was funny, my dad carried just a small pocket knife around with him always. Do you guys sell pocket knives as well?
So that is the next phase. That's Montana Knife Company 2.0. That's what we're gearing up for. So the goal is, since day one, our goal was to make a hunting knife that we can hand to any hunter going on any hunt anywhere in the world, and we don't have to worry about it failing. So we're putting all that effort into like, how can we make the fail-proof folding knife? Because there's a lot of things that could go wrong with a folding knife in the backcountry. The mechanism could fail. They can collapse on you. They're not as strong. They're not as rigid. So the idea is like, so we're putting a lot of time and development into our first folder before we release it. And the goal is to have one by the end of next year. And we're also making it 100% in-house in the United States. So it's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of mechanisms. It's much more complex than just your standard fixed blade knife.
What are your goals for 2020 how is I guess Q4 is big for everyone. Is Q4 like prime time for knives like it is for every other category?
Yeah. Q4, like we're gearing up for that a lot, because so last week was a really good test for us because we wanted to kind of push our system to see how well we did. We kind of artificially created a Black Friday in August before hunting season. Second best day in our company history was on Thursday. So the team is on an all-time high right now. My operations manager is not talking to me. My shipping director is probably not talking to me. But it went really well. But that's us practicing for Black Friday. Because between Black Friday and Christmas, we turn into a gift company. Especially, it just seems like that's just the peak. The past 2 years has just been absolutely insane between that little stretch of time.
And I'm just looking at your growth trajectory here. Like year over year, you're more than doubling from 21 to 22, and then more than doubling. You're on pace to about double. It looks like in 2023. How big can Montana Knife Company get?
Our goal, our pie in the sky goal right now, like we want to be up in that like $50 million to $100 million, range. We don't expect to do that in 2-3 years. But we know we can get up there, especially with the expansion of our culinary line, the introduction of a pocket knife. The pocket knife, we're all kind of scared about because that could completely change everything. We're currently right now, we're selling the hardest knife to kind of sell, because when you look at like any of our peers, 90% of their catalogs are all folders and they have 10% fixed blades. We're 100% fixed blades right now. So we're really excited about the opportunity of like, once we're into that, the pocket knife or folder world, especially doing it the high quality that we're going to do it at. I don't think we're going to have a trouble to hit those numbers as we start getting exposure and things like that.
Who do you see? I guess I have two different questions. Who would you say are your main competitors in that? Like, are there brands in that, like in the hunting knife space that are doing in that 50 million range?
Yeah, there are. And I wouldn't say that they're in the hunting space, but they're in the knife world, together. Obviously Benchmade, they're American made. They make amazing knives. Josh and I met with the owner. They're very well aware of us. There's Buck Knives. They do really well. And then around there's a couple like what we call like mid-tech level brands, which are kind of like operating in between that space. But the market's definitely there, especially once you expand outside of the hunt, get into culinary and pocket knives. And then also too, like we have tactical that comes along with some, government contracts and things like that. So there's definitely room to grow.
Talking to you reminds me a little bit of talking to Shashan from Ridge Wallet, and he was really focused on creating Ridge Wallet into like I'm trying to remember the watch brand he compared it to, but like a timeless watch brand, one of these brands that's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. Is that your goal with MKC? And are there any brands that you like really idolize, maybe not even in the knife space, that have really reached that status?
Yeah. So, I mean, it might sound kind of odd, but like, I always look at like Rolex. Like Rolex has done really, really well with establishing branding, establishing like their, it's an investment. It's a piece that you buy that you're going to pass down. And that also goes back to one of our principles of the company and the reason why Josh was so passionate about starting Montana Knife Company, doing USA Made, was in the early 2000s and teens, the entire knife world started racing to the bottom of the barrel. They wanted to make the cheapest knife possible, get it in big box stores, and then they were also making like the thickest knives possible so that people weren't breaking them or returning them and like all this stuff. And like they just weren't good tools. They weren't good knives. And they were almost becoming disposable. Like even if you bought a $30, folder, you couldn't, it was too thick to even resharpen. So you just throw it away and you buy a new one. And, Josh and I kept on saying, it's like the only thing we ever want passed down from our grandfather or father, stuff like that is like, we want a knife, maybe his watch, maybe some art, but like, those are really the only three things and we started losing the knife. Like we started like, people don't want their replaceable blade knife. People don't want their box opener, like things like that. Like we want that one knife that your grandfather, took on a hunt and it had some, it still had some hair in it from elk that he killed. And it had the broken tip on it and it's been over sharpened. It's got all wavy edge. Like we love that. Like that's what we want Montana Knife Company to be, is like the knife to be handed down from generation after generation after generation.
So cool. What's your favorite hunt? I've never been hunting. I am a totally urbanized male. I have not fired a gun. I have not shot an animal. What's your favorite situation to hunt in?
So, I've been very fortunate enough to go on some awesome hunts in Alaska, hunted in Spain, hunted all over the, United States. I actually just got back from a trip up in Canada. The best hunts are when you're with the best people. I've been on some hunts where we didn't harvest anything, but those were the best hunts because they probably were really hard. But I was with, my best friends, or I was with my father-in-law or with my family and stuff like that. So the biggest thing is like, what we tell people is like, find the people that you actually want to spend time with and, but then go out and find a comfortable hunt to start off with. But like, I mean, you can't be, just mule deer hunting, whitetail hunting, like the simpler, like I don't want to say simpler, but those are like the easiest ones to start doing.
The most available ones. But
yeah.
I agree. Any weekend where I'm off my phone or any evening where I'm off my phone is already a win. So if I can be doing it with friends and hunting some big game, even better. So next time you're in BC, let me know, and if you want a greenhorn out to learn hunting, so I can teach it to my daughter. You'll have to have me out.
Oh, we'd love to have you out. It'd be
nice,
great.
Man.
Yeah,
cool. Well, if you're listening to this and you want an heirloom knife, you got to go to montanaknifecompany.com. And then if people want to get in touch with you, how do you recommend they do that?
Yeah, I mean, so the best way is Instagram. It's just my name, Brandon Horoho. But then also too, just email is always good. I don't mind throwing my email out. It's just brandon@montanaknifecompany.com. If you guys have any questions, just don't hesitate to hit me up, or if anything, questions about the brand or anything like that. We're very transparent about everything we do. And, our goal is to, just kind of educate people on the knife industry. What is a good knife? Like, why is it worth investing in a really good knife that's worth passing down to your kids?
Very cool. Nice, man. Thanks a lot. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Awesome, Eric. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you're not a subscriber to our newsletter, you can do that right now at directtoconsumer, all one word, .co. I'm Eric Dyck, and this has been the D2C Podcast. We'll see you next time.